indicate more than 50 people killed, including many high-ranking officers and several hundred injured. How the missile got through air defenses surrounding the Pentagon is still the subject of much debate.
You wanted to know who I am, Zero Cool? Well, let me explain the New World Order. Governments and corporations need people like you and me. We are samurai, the keyboard cowboys, and all those other people out there who have no idea what's going on are the cattle. Moo. I need your help. You need my help. Let me help you earn your spurs.
For God's sake, don't touch it.
Dad, what's wrong with the telly?
Good evening, London. Allow me first to apologize for
That's the emergency channel.
I do, like many of you, appreciate the comforts of the everyday routine, the security of the familiar, the tranquility of repetition.
Bloody hell.
I enjoy them as much as any bloke. But in the spirit of commemoration,
Who's that, Mum?
whereby those important events of the past, usually associated with someone's death or the end of some awful bloody struggle, are celebrated with a nice holiday, I thought we could mark this November the 5th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered, by taking some time out of our daily lives to sit down and have a little chat. There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak.
Let me think, just let me
I
think.
suspect even now, orders are being shouted into telephones, and men with guns will soon be on their way.
It's Chancellor Sutler.
Damn it!
Why? Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there?
You designed it, sir. You wanted it foolproof. You told me every television in London.
Cruelty and injustice, intolerance and oppression. And where once you had the freedom to object, to think and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance coercing your conformity and soliciting
Cameras.
your submission.
We need cameras.
How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. I know you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you, and in your panic you turned to the now High Chancellor Adam Sutler. He promised you order, he promised you peace, and all he demanded in return was your silent, obedient consent.
Inspector, you're almost through.
Last night, I sought to end that silence. Last night, I destroyed the Old Bailey to remind this country of what it has forgotten. More than 400 years ago, a great citizen wished to embed the 5th of November forever in our memory. His hope was to remind the world that fairness, justice, and freedom are more than words. They are perspectives. So if you've seen nothing, if the crimes of this government remain unknown to you, then I would suggest that you allow the 5th of November to pass unmarked. But if you see what I see, if you feel as I feel, and if you would seek as I seek, then I ask you to stand beside me 1 year from tonight, outside the gates of Parliament, and together we shall give them a 5th of November that shall never, ever be forgotten.
Yeah, I'm here for a peaceful demonstration. I have nothing in my items to hide, but I would prefer to not be searched. So that means that you're going to detain me if I don't show you my bag. Is that correct? I'd like to hear out of your mouth that you're going to detain me.
Rock, I can speak from
Because I feel like I have nothing to hide and I don't see why you need to look through my things. I'm not refusing. I'm saying if I'm going to be detained, I will show you my things, but I would prefer not to.
You have no right to search it.
You're not entering.
Yes, we are entering. Link arms. We're entering. Everyone who wants, link arms. We're entering. We're entering.
Told.
Hey, what gives you the right? On what basis? What legal basis do you have?
Coming to the park, sir. Well, right now we have an issue with some of the bags.
You have no suspicion. You have no. Yeah, exactly. You have no suspicion. We're sick of your bullshit. No suspicion.
Let them in!
Back it up. Back it up. Back it up. You're attacking Stop. We're gonna check your bags. You don't have anything in your bag, then you can come into the park. Alright? If you don't have anything in the bag, if you're not gonna let you check your bag, then you're gonna leave the park. Do you understand?
Can you explain to me why they have to have their bags fixed up?
For weapons. For officer safety and public safety.
We're not breaking any law.
Public park! Public park! Public park! Public park! Public park! Public park!
You're breaking the law yourself.
You're not doing it because there's cameras on you, huh, buddy? There's cameras all over.
You're not allowed to do it. This is becoming a dictatorship. And you're part of the dictatorship.
Follow him! Watch out! Watch out!
Told in the Toronto Star that even the mayor didn't know about it. He found out about it by reading the newspaper.
That's right.
Okay, let's go through the Act and tell me why it disturbs you. It's called the Public Works Protection Act. If I understand it correctly, it was originally passed in 1939 and some revision in 1990.
Right. And it was originally intended to protect courthouses, police stations, and things like that. That's what it's been applied to in the past.
And it's usually, its origin was about attacks. It was like a terrorist attack on a building.
That's correct.
I mean, it doesn't seem like the original intent was against protests and demonstration and the right of assembly.
That's right. It was to protect public officials against attack, not to enact legislation which would hamper peaceful protesters in trying to get their message across.
Now, I questioned Chief Blair about this at a press conference yesterday. He says this act has been tested in court over the last few years and found valid and within the charter. Is that true?
Well, it has been found valid in respect of courthouses, so that each particular context has to be reviewed by a court. What happens under this legislation is that the government will decide to designate something a public work, and as a result of that, if it's designated, then all of the indicia and prohibitions that you're going to refer to apply to that particular area, so that in the context of a courthouse, the Court of Appeal found that it was constitutional.
But it's never been tested in terms of protest and demonstration.
Absolutely
to restrict
not.
The right of free assembly.
Absolutely not.
So it's not quite right what the chief tells us there. Okay, let's go through the act. It's called the Public Works Protection Act, and one of the provisions in it early on, it says not just railways, canals, highways, bridges, power works, etc. It says any other building, place, or work designated a public work by the Lieutenant Governor in Council, which more or less means the Ontario Cabinet decides and they go to Lieutenant Governor and he signs off on it.
That's right.
They can pick any building they want.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that's the problem with it. It's one of the problems with it, because obviously the act was enacted with a particular purpose in mind, and give that kind of unlimited authority to the cabinet to designate certain areas of the city. They could designate, for example, the whole of downtown Toronto as a public work, and then public protest would be prohibited, and that's one of the problems we see with that legislation.
I think it's kind of also extraordinary. It's not just police officers who can enforce this act. It's something they're calling guards.
That's correct.
And the list of people who can appoint guards is like just about anybody in an official position in the government. And let me read you the list. The head or deputy head of municipal council, the chief of police of a municipality where the public work is located, and we know that can be just about anything. A person acting in the place or stead of the head or deputy head, which means anybody they appoint. the chair or other person of a board, a commission, another body. It goes on and on, the list of people. But the most important thing that then leads to is every person who gets appointed this way has the powers of a peace officer. You can turn almost anybody they want into a policeman.
That's right. And of course we saw earlier this week or the previous week where there were a number of private security people that were going to come to Toronto to deal with the G20, and they weren't even licensed in Ontario, so that we've got people here that could be not licensed or they're quickly licensed without any kind of review, have the kind of powers that you're citing in that legislation.
So you could have a situation where a kind of a Blackwater type of organization could all become policemen overnight, with any number one of these officials the right to make them so.
That's right. Or a rent-a-cop that is working at a shopping center, and that's the kind of powers that these people will have.
And does that mean that they would immediately then have the right to bear arms if they hadn't previously been allowed?
Not necessarily, but the only specific powers they would have would be under that legislation to arrest and so on.
They become a peace officer.
Right. But as a peace officer, then there are certain entitlements. One is to, obviously, to bear arms.
So it might be read that
That's
way,
right.
that after being called a guard, you might then have a right to a gun.
That's correct, and to use whatever force is reasonable in the circumstances.
Next, powers of a guard or a peace officer, 3A. A guard or peace officer, A, may require any person entering or attempting to enter any public work or any approach thereto to furnish his or her name and address, identify himself or herself, and state to the purpose of which he or she desires to enter the public work, in writing or otherwise. And the next one, I suppose, is the big one. May search without warrant any person enter a public work or a vehicle in the charge or under the control of any such person, or which has recently been or is suspected of having been in the charge or under the control of such a person. And this essentially, does this essentially eliminate probable cause?
It seems to. It seems to. I'm sure if it went to court, there would be a different kind of answer. But what this legislation does on its face is that it gives the police the authority to ask a citizen to identify themselves who happen to be in downtown Toronto, and they've designated a whole area of downtown Toronto. And to have a police with the authority to force you to identify yourself without any cause whatever is frightening. And then it goes on to give them authority to search the person without any cause. And of course what that original intention with the legislation was is if you're going into a courthouse or a police station, there may be reasons to have people search, but in downtown Toronto, it's somewhat, I think, unreasonable to request that.
So you could just be driving along and you can be searched, which means the whole right to privacy and right to probable cause is gone on the search. You just have to be within an area.
Within that approach, as it was called.
As we'll learn later, that's a pretty flexible thing. Just what is that area?
That's right.
Okay. The final piece of that, we refuse permission to any person to enter a public work and use such force as is necessary to prevent